first of 2 practice seminars. For those of you who don't know, we'll be doing 2 rounds of this. Alright, so that I think initially it was actually planned for 1 round, but they realized that later on, a lot of people actually want to go for different topics, so they actually have 2 rounds. So for this, we're going to start on time, okay? And since we're actually quite a cozy group, so I do encourage you to please form maybe a cluster of at least 3 of you all. Alright? Okay, so that we can actually start. Okay, so maybe before starting, right, just to actually get to warm things up a little bit, because it's a big room with quite a few of us. So to warm things up a little bit, now I know that some of you are actually volunteer management practitioners, okay? Some of you are maybe actually also in management as well. So let's warm things up. In your tables, right, what I want you to do is that, think about this, okay? So, okay, I think I have to take the mic. All right, so let's imagine that some IT volunteers come to your organization and they actually ask to volunteer, all right? And, what aspects of volunteer management would you think that you want to augment with AI, right? To set the context a little bit, there's been quite a lot of rave recently about ChatGPT and AI, right? So, yeah, so imagine, if let's say someone kind of say, I can do something with regards to ChatGPT and integrate AI into your volunteer management. What aspect of it will you actually want to use AI for in volunteer management? All right, so I'm just going to give this, so what I can do is that if you're actually in 1 person in your group, go and find another table where you can actually have at least 3 of you, and then you can actually share. All right, I know some of you may be saying, what is ChatGPT? So, to actually bring everybody up to speed, okay, let me actually just share with you this little short video, okay, and we can actually see what ChatGPT is. All right.
Monzo.com makes GANTs great again. Yeah, you know what? I'm not going to say again, because they never were, and
okay, that's not the one.
See, with Monzo.com, making a Gantt chart is as simple as throwing a process or project stages here.
All right.
Adding owners and timelines and whatever.
GPT-4 is the latest AI system from OpenAI, the lab that created DALL-E and ChatGPT. GPT-4 is a breakthrough in problem-solving capabilities. For example, you can ask it how you would clean the inside of a tank filled with piranhas, and it'll give you something useful. It can also read, analyze, or generate up to 25,000 words of text. It can write code in all major programming languages. And it understands images as input and can reason with them in sophisticated ways. Most importantly, after we created GPT-4, we spent months making it safer and more aligned with how you want to use it. The methods we've developed to continuously improve GPT-4 will help us as we work towards AI systems that will empower us all.
Okay, so just a disclaimer, this isn't brought to you by ChatGPT, OpenAI. All right. Okay, so maybe what you can do now, very quickly in your tables, maybe I want you actually to discuss each another. All right. What aspects of volunteer management do you want to see augment with AI? All right. So we just have about a very quick 4-minute-ish, okay, just share very quickly. You don't have to be a very deep discussion. All right, so over to you all, okay?
Someone suggested doing psychological testing to AI, but I think it's a bit more complicated because human interaction is very complicated. Right? The AI can only give you a certain answer, but if you throw a different scenario, you don't know whether the AI will actually come out. Yeah.
One is training test. So we do have a lot of
Everything when I use it is regularly updated. Of course, with dirty data, that's when the human must come in, because they know that it's web. They can never
All right. Okay. I see some very lively discussion going on. Okay. All right. I see some very lively discussion going on. Okay. I hope that this will not be the end of your, little exchange. I see some of you actually showing, what you do, what you can do with ChatGPT and all that. Yeah, I'm equally amazed when I first saw it. So yeah, keep the conversation going. All right. Maybe what I'll do now is I'll just invite. So for today, our topic is harnessing the power of digital. Sorry. Yeah. Harnessing the power of digital. And for that, maybe I'll just invite our panelists. So we have, yes, panelists to the front, please. We have Benjamin, Bart, and Jasper. Yeah. So maybe give them a round of applause. All right. Sorry, before I actually begin, you actually see Jaslyn behind. She's the volunteer helping with taking attendance. So please make sure that she has taken note of attendance, all right? Okay, if you haven't, please look for her. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you panelists as well for joining us today. Maybe let me introduce myself first. I'm James, all right? So I'm one of the practitioners. I work with Shine Children and Youth Services. I also, on the sidelines, run my own social enterprise as well, looking into mental resilience. Okay, so that's really a little bit about me. Today, we have a lineup of panelists, and I think I'm not sure it's intentional, but actually I went to look at the profile, and I do realize that among the three of you, right, over the three of you, there is actually a good mix of people, private and public sector, right? Yes, if you actually look at that. So, I really hope that the panelists will today give you very good insights. And really what we hope to do today is really for us to really sit down, and it's very rare to actually kind of have like three management, top management sitting here, and we can tap the brains, about digitalization. All right? So we really want to make this very, very free flow. It's more like a conversation, okay? So this is how it's going to go. We'll actually have a panel discussion for about 40 minutes, all right, thereabouts, where we actually discuss questions, about digitalization. Hopefully, you'll bring back some things with you. What's going to happen next is that we are going to actually open the time for very simple question and answer from you. All right, so if you do have questions, please write them down. We will have you actually just read them out, so I'll pass you the mic. You can actually just ask, all right? Okay, of course, before that, you state your name and your organization and then your question. All right, just to make sure all of you are in the correct room. Okay, this is basically cryptocurrency. No, it's not cryptocurrency. Okay, it's harnessing the power of digital in volunteer management. Okay, let me introduce. So we've introduced a bit about today. I think we've heard a lot today. Talked about from DPM talking about how volunteerism is actually a very crucial part to nation building, right? And if you think about it, the people who are basically driving this are the volunteer managers and the volunteer management, people who are basically doing volunteer management. But yet, those of you who are volunteer managers know that the role is a very dynamic one. You really need to do a lot of different things. And I guess that's where digitalization comes in, right? To basically be able to actually even empower and resource volunteer managers. So today we have with us, three panelists, okay? So I'm going to read to you why I actually see that it's from the people, public, and private. So we have Gasper, okay? Gasper here. It's from, so he's the chief executive of SOS, right? So most of you would know SOS actually does suicide prevention work, right? And I know that you actually happen to actually also work in the private sector, right? Even in regions. So you have someone who is actually in the private sector and now in the people sector. Okay, we also have Benjamin, okay, beside me. Benjamin is actually the Secretary General of Singapore Red Cross Society. And yeah, I noted that you actually have been also in the kind of like the public sector, right? Would you consider that? Yeah, because I see that you actually have been with like Singapore Foreign Services from 1981, the Singapore High Commission in Brunei. I think the list goes on. Singapore Embassy in the Philippines. Then you were like in Singapore Embassy in the US. Even the Laos people.
More about me than
I've done my research. Yes, okay. And so I think you're involved currently also OMF International St. Andrews Mission Hospital. So I think a good mix also of public and people. And last but not least, we also have Bart. Bart is actually the CEO, Bart Lim, Mr. Bart Lim, CEO of Catholic Welfare Services, right? And you have been actually very involved in the people sector, right? Yeah, being involved in, like I see down here, the church community outreach program, and you have been in social service sector for quite some time as well, right? So today, we actually have quite rich experience here, all right? So maybe let me just kick off with the first question, all right? Maybe very candidly I ask, have you all used ChatGPT before? And if so, what have you found? But we want to share a little bit what you used it for? Or what have you tried with ChatGPT so far?
script today.
Yeah, hi guys. Yeah, this is off script, right? I didn't prepare. Okay, I'm not a very techy guy, but I mean, yeah, the people are talking about how useful it is, so I just went to try it to test a few questions to see the answers. So I guess it's very useful, but I guess the trick that the experts say will be, it depends on how you ask the question, right? So yeah, so I'm just a novice, so I think you guys are professionals. I'll leave it back to you. Yeah.
Okay. And thanks, Bart. What about Gasper and Benjamin? Have you all tried ChatGPT? No. Haven't yet, huh? Okay, maybe after today we can try. So for me, right, it's quite interesting. I tried ChatGPT. I actually typed in how do you reach out to you volunteers, and then the whole plan came out. I actually do training in volunteer management, and then now I'm thinking actually maybe I might be jobless already after this. Everybody just turn to ChatGPT. Okay, maybe let's start with our first question. Okay, to provide a little bit of context for today's discussion, maybe we can actually hear from the panelists, maybe on what is like digitalization project that you've taken on in your organizations, and what made you decide on that project. Maybe I'll start with Benjamin.
So by way of introduction, what perhaps I would like to say is that over the last few years, the Singapore Red Cross has embarked on a process of what we call overall Singapore Red Cross refresh. And one of the key elements of the refresh strategy is the digitalization of our processes. So actually one of the first points that I wanted to make is that when we talk about the digitalization strategy for volunteer management, from my experience in Red Cross, it has to be part of a broader strategy of digitalization of the organization. That is when you can maximize the digitalization of your volunteer management processes. So we started with developing some of the systems to digitalize our processes, our financial processes, our claims processes, our HR processes. And then we developed our own approval processes so that people can digitalize our approval. You don't have to look for files as to who approved what. It's all in the system now. And we realized that it would be very powerful to digitalize our volunteer management as well. Now, later on, I will share with you there were many challenges because we embarked on a first project, and after several years of serving us, we had to give it up, and then we developed a second volunteer management system. But I suppose the point that I want to make is that, number one, any digitalization process of the volunteer management has to be part of a broader strategy of the processes within your organization. And for me, I think one of the key challenges when we embark on the digitalization journey is the mindset shift. And when it comes to volunteer management system, there are two mindsets that you have to change. Immediately you think of the volunteers, trying to persuade them and educate them and get them on to go on the online journey. But actually, the mindset shift among your staff is just as challenging, because you're so used to using your Excel sheet and what have you, that it's so difficult to get everyone to see that the digitalization process can bring benefits. So I better stop here so that everyone can get a chance.
Yeah, since Benjamin spoke about the volunteer management system, I probably want to focus on in SOS, we do pick up calls, right, from people in crisis calling us, and I think what struck us badly was during the pandemic, right? When suddenly it was gone orange and government don't allow our volunteers to come into our phone room. Right? And we only have one service at that point in time. That was about close to 4 years ago. So what we did was that we really struggled. Of course, at that same time, we worked very closely with the ministry to see how to bring in our volunteers. But what is more important is that, we were at that point in time looking at our strategic plan, how do we want to move forward. And digitalization is one part of the whole plan, but what Benjamin said is very important. It has to be very strategic, and the strategy part of this digitalization has to come from your needs, and it's not about you want to digitalize and then you start to look at what are the things that you can digitalize. I think it's very important to look at what are your needs first before you look at your digitalization roadmap, right? And what we did was that we, at that point in time, we do see that some driving force to drive us to make that changes. The first one is definitely the timely and consistent service that we need to deliver, right? To make sure that our volunteers are able to be supported to provide that kind of service support to our callers and texters, right? We also look at the changing landscape, right, where people are more used to social media, texting, WhatsApp, and things like that. The third thing is that we also want to attract the younger generations of volunteers to come in. So all these things we put together, then we have to go back to a drawing board and say, okay, let's look at the way we want to serve our client, how we want to serve, will it change? How will it change? And then also we look at how do we want to engage our volunteers? What is the best way to look at it? And these two have to be interrelated. How we want to serve and how do we want to engage has to be interrelated, so that it's not about just our client. It's also about how to empower, how to engage our volunteers to support the client. And if we're going to do digitalization, what are those things and how do we want to do it, and how do we want to use that to complement or empower our volunteers? And that will drive to the result of what we want to do in terms of our technology roadmap, and it has to fit into our bigger strategic plan, right? How do we want to move forward as an organization in the near future? Yeah, and I totally agree with Benjamin that there are a lot of challenges, right? And being an organization that depends very, very, very heavily on volunteers, because we operate 365 days, non-stop, 24 hours a day. We have since grown our services from just hotline to now text to many other support group and counseling, interventions program. We do require a lot of volunteers, and volunteer is a huge part of our resources. So with that digitalization, we have able to grow our volunteer from 3 years ago, about 200 to now 400 over. And our volunteers are not those volunteers that come by and then they can do as and when they want. Our volunteers need to go through intensive, rigorous training, assessment before they can put on the front line to support the at-risk individual. So it's a stress from both sides for us also to see how to use technology to bring up that level of volunteers to cut down the training times involved in physical training and things like that. So all this is part of the whole digitalization plan that we need to look at. Yeah, so I just stop here.
All right. So thank you, Benjamin and Gasper. Right. I'm sure Bart actually also have something to share. What I'm hearing currently is that based on need, all right, one is the need, and then also part of a bigger, broader digitalization plan. And so, we hear how for Red Cross you went into digitalization in terms of finance, HR, and even volunteer management. So, Gasper, for SOS, is the need, right, basically to support your service users and also, in a way, engage your volunteers. What was the digitalization project that you embarked on?
So there are a few, but I think the major one was for us to revamp or upgrade our telephony and our CRM system. We make a concerted effort into looking at how to look at a system that are scalable, and it's not cheap, it's a big investment. I think digitalization, when you plan for digitalization plan, don't just go for the needs that can meet your current needs. I think you must also look at things that are scalable, and you must really know how do you want to use that technology in future. For us, we invested quite a huge amount, almost close to $500,000 just to upgrade our telephony and CRM system. You ask me now, is it worth it? I think it is. Why? Later on, I'll share with you the outcome. Because of that, we are also able to roll out new services, right? Our text services, which is now probably one of the more popular crisis text helpline. We are able to also allow our support system to be supported remotely. We are also able to allow 100% training for our text volunteer at home, and that will also use part of AI and things like that. And also, we are able to allow support systems like our staff, all these things, to be activated during midnight and things like that. to support our at-risk client, right? So sometimes the caller, midnight, they have issue, and our crisis support team, which they are supporting the volunteer, may need help. Our counselor, may be activated, and they are able to all go into the same system to look at the database and provide, necessary support and things like that. So, so it's more collaborative, it's more integrated. So because of all this, that we are able to, provide a seamless support to our client, whether or not the client texts us or call us, or whether they are our counseling client, and midnight suddenly they feel not safe and they want to call us or text us, we are able to support them, with that system that we have. And whether or not you are volunteer in text or hotline, you don't have to worry, because the crisis support team people are able to empower you or support you to support the client. And because of that, we are able to also introduce or enhance our service within that integrated system to be more intentional. So we launched this active rescue service, where previously where people are on the verge of ending their life, they call us or they reach out to us. What we can do is only listen to them and encourage them to stay safe. But because of all this, digitalization and integration of our services, we are now able to do more intentional kind of engagement with them, with all the services that we have. And long story short, over the last 11 months, we are able to intervene and save 114 lives. When these are the people who are on the verge of ending their life when they call us. And we are able to engage them and make sure that they are safe, either at home or at hospital through our service. Right? So I think that's the impact. So you asked me whether the $500,000 investment, is it worth it? I tell you, it's definitely more than worth it, right?
Yeah, definitely, for at least 114 lives and more counting, right? So maybe we hear from Bart as well. Yeah, from in terms of for Catholic Welfare Services, right? What was the digitalization project that you embarked on, and what made you decide to do?
Okay, yeah, I think good afternoon, everyone. So for Catholic Welfare Services, as per what Benjamin and Gaspar shared, the digitization of the volunteer management is only one piece. Right? So it should be the part of a bigger picture. So what we have done so far, before I jump into the VM part, right, is e-HR, right? So we've done something on the HR side, e-procurement. So we have done also simple stuff, e-visitation booking for people who visit our nursing homes, etc. Right? And actually now we're embarking on one whereby our finance and our corporate services, right? We have tons and tons of documents that we have to file for 5 years, 7 years. So we're thinking of digitizing them, and then you can put in the system, you call it, it comes out immediately without having to go to the storeroom and fall over. Yeah, so anyway, that's the big piece. Specifically for today's sharing, is it still, the mic, is it okay? A little bit funny, huh? Yeah, so I should put it further away?
Just further away.
Oh, further away is better, right? Oh, so sorry about that. Yeah, I can hear my breathing. That's not nice. Okay, yeah, so, okay, basically for volunteer management, digitization, right, the initiative. So Catholic Welfare Services have been serving the community since 1959. I think not many of us were born then, right? Yeah, so it's 64 years old. So we thank God, like in a way, we managed to grow our services along with the times. So we have elderly nursing homes, hospice, shelters for the homeless, and also training centers for the intellectually sort of challenged. But so as we grow our services, the number of volunteers grow as well, right? So as with most of us, right, as you grow, you manage the growing pains of how do we manage this effectively. So what we saw were pain points that we have to address. We could no longer manage or connect with our volunteers in the old intimate one-on-one way. Phone calls, see you in the office, because it's difficult, too many, right? So the volunteers had challenges. One, how do I find information on what services I should volunteer in CWS. There's many, many services that we have. What skill sets do I need to be suitable? What commitment you need from me to accept, to think that I will be suitable, etc., etc., right? So the previous system that used to work in a more intimate way is no longer suitable, right? Phone calls, emails, come and see me in my office, it takes really, really long, and it becomes choppy. And along the process, we do lose quite a fair bit of good-hearted volunteers who could have actually served. Maybe, imagine, just we drop 50%, 20%, 30%, so we lose that. On the other hand, for us as an organization, we do not no longer have at our fingertips the information we need to effectively manage our volunteers. Who are they? How many do we have? Which services are they helping? What skill sets do they bring? How active have they been? What's their feedback? Are they feeling satisfaction in their service with us? It's hard to call because you have 500 of them. How do you do that, right? So these are the pain points, and we took that humble small step 2 years ago. We say let's put some focus on it. This girl is here, our volunteer manager. So we hired, she was hired, dedicated, put the thing together, put in the volunteer management system. So we said one single platform of truth, right? Where the information is live, updated, right? So you don't have to go through your pieces of paper, your spreadsheets, right? To try to get a moment of truth. What is the current situation? You don't need that. So we have that, and we're thankful. It seems to be working. Today, for Liana, our volunteer manager, we just need to press the button on the system. We can see pie charts, trend charts, where our volunteers are, where was the last event that he or she was in, hours clock, are they satisfied, etc., right? And we can effectively redeploy suitable volunteers to the right places of need. For the volunteers, it seems like they're happier. Yeah, engagement is better. We can do one-on-one engagements through the system, right? They get the necessary training they need. So our volunteers have doubled since 2 years, right? From 250 to 500. So we are thankful. It's working out. So give it a try.
Yeah. So James, if you allow me, also let me say a bit about our volunteer management system. So besides the broad strategy, when we embarked on our volunteer management system, primarily it's because of the number of volunteers we had and the number of services. The Singapore Red Cross is one of those multi-purpose charities. Most charities are single-purpose, but the Singapore Red Cross, like some of us, are multi-purpose. We have many services, both local and overseas. At any one time, we may have about 20,000 or so, or even more volunteers. About 9,000 of them are active, and about 1,000 of them are more actively engaged every year. So we find that the old way of managing the volunteers is a very difficult one, as Bert pointed out. So we embarked on the volunteer management system. So it's a single platform that, first of all, does recruitment. So volunteers, anyone can go on to sign on as a volunteer, and then it'll prompt us to engage them. Eventually, we mobilize them. We are able to communicate with them regularly. We are able to also coordinate the training for our volunteers. We have embarked on a volunteer pathway, which includes volunteer orientation, volunteer skills training, and volunteer leadership. And the leadership is also a pathway because you have to do some volunteering hours first, then you do some training before you are inducted as a volunteer leader. What we also found in the past is that when you kept records, sometimes you may send volunteers for training, and some of these training are very extensive and expensive, but sometimes you lose record. Who is trained in first aid? Who is trained in psychological first aid? So the system now is able to quickly point us to the people who are properly trained. And then the records. You see, for about 8-9 years now, we have instituted the annual volunteer awards. And in order to ensure that volunteers are fairly judged, you need to have consistent records. Otherwise, someone might say, oh, you gave him the award because your favoritism or what. So the volunteer records is also very important. We are now in the process of developing our donor management system, which will be linked to the volunteer management system. So we also know when a volunteer is also a donor. So we have a comprehensive record of our volunteers. So I think this really empowers the organization, but it also empowers the volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Benjamin, Gaspar, and Bart for sharing a little bit on the your digitalization project, specifically in the area of volunteer management, right? So I hear that there's actually a lot of, in terms of getting information, at a tip of, at your fingertips, connecting, even in service delivery, even in also like volunteer leadership and all that. I want to actually go back to Benjamin, because Benjamin, you actually mentioned a little bit about how you actually went on board to volunteer management system, right? So I want to actually change, because I think it's definitely, you can have a little bit more conversations with the three organizations about, it's exciting to hear about their VM capability. But we want to also change gear a little bit to talk a little bit about the challenges, right? So it's exciting to hear what has come up, but what have been the challenges that you have faced, and also what were the strategies you have taken to address them? So maybe from Benjamin first?
Yeah. So in terms of the challenges, I already mentioned one, mindset. Changing the mindset of both your staff as well as your volunteers to adopt digitalization, being able to go online. A big challenge is if you have a large pool of senior volunteers, because senior volunteers are a bit more reluctant to go online. But we are slowly achieving that as well. The second big challenge is finances. I think Casper or Bud mentioned it. Finance, to develop a volunteer management system is quite an expensive affair. So when you decide to embark on a volunteer management system, you must be committed to it. Because just because everyone is talking about digitalization and you decide to digitalize your volunteer management, and then you don't fully maximize it, you will be actually spending a lot of money not effectively. Because first of all, there's the development cost, and then there's the ongoing cost, which can be almost as much over a period of 3 years. The third is getting the right system. So after, maybe about 6-7 years in this digitalization journey, there are actually three main options, three broad options. One is called off-the-shelf. Now, off-the-shelf, if you're a small organization which is very uncomplicated processes, you can just adopt an off-the-shelf option. Second is to develop it from ground up. And that's what we did in our first volunteer management system. From ground up, we got a company and then we built it. The challenge or the problem with the ground up is that if your company that developed it goes bust, your system becomes quite redundant, especially if you have to make modifications. They will tell you, oh, we give you the key and everything, but often it doesn't work. Generally, for our third, we have adopted the third option, which is like the best described is like a Lego brick. There's a system called OutSystems where you can put it together as your needs are. But there are many vendors who use that system. So if one vendor that you're using goes bust, you can always use another vendor who also is using OutSystem. So OutSystem is like a Lego brick and then you build on it. So it's sort of a compromise between building from ground up and taking off the shelf. So we decided to abandon our first volunteer management system after it had run its course, and we felt that any modifications would cost more than developing a new system.
Thank you, thank you. Thanks, Benjamin. I mean, it's great hearing even the considerations for future, right? Yeah. I mean, it's like, I believe it's actually also thinking about the future and not just about what system we are stuck with. So financial mindset and the solution itself. I hear from Gasper that, the digitalization, basically one of the difficult parts, right, is during the pandemic, and that's why you actually start looking at, how can we actually use digitalization? What were some of the challenges that SOS faced, and how do you address them?
Actually, I resonate very well with Benjamin. First of all, the mindset, right? Maybe I just go slightly deeper into the issue that we face in terms of mindset. First one is the fear of technology. Like what Benjamin says is true, right? As more senior volunteers and also staff, they start to fear about the technology, especially in the sector that, or in the service that we are in, right? We are engaging people at risk, right? The fear of technology will mess up our process, how we serve our client and things like that. So that's why we have an in-depth discussion about the way we want to serve our client and the way we want to engage our volunteers. That's number one, fear of technology. The second one is in the service that we are in is a high-touch service where we need human interaction, right? And a lot of fear will be on what if the technology become too cold, right? That the client, you actually pushes away the client, right? And these are all valid fear, right? Mindset fear, right? But if we need to identify out all these issues, and once we identify all these issues, then we can objectively address that. I think the third one is expertise. Many of our SSA, even when SOS during that time 3 years ago, we don't even have expertise. How do you know that this is the right system? Where do you can you be sure? How do you convince the board the future of using this technology and things like that? So what we did was to call out subject matter expert, those skilled volunteers to participate and help us redesigning the whole thing, right? And of course, the second one is cost of investment, right? Benjamin said it correctly. It's not it's not a simple investment. It's a long-term investment. You have to look at sustainability. You have to know where the funding come from, and how you're going to optimize or maximize the usage of this technology. Whether can it be integrated with your, like for example, Benjamin mentioned very appropriately how they use the volunteer management system to integrate with the donor management system, right? How do you use that? And these are all things that you need to consider when you plan. In SOS, we also look at how do we look at volunteer care from our system. So as you know that we allow some of our volunteers now to support remotely, we also want to make sure that we have that care part to the volunteer, because our volunteers are highly stressed, right? When they handle certain crisis situation, they need support. So we do have a virtual office, right? When a volunteer do their duty from home or remotely, then they will need to log into this virtual office. This virtual office is designed just similar to our office. You have a meeting room, you have resource room where they can go in. If let's say I'm not too sure, they can go to the resource room. They can look at all the resources like SOP, the training material and things like that. And if we find that, or they can also go to pantry, right, to meet whoever is on duty virtually and have chit chat and things like that. Just like a normal office. And after, let's say for example, after they handle a crisis situation, crisis call, crisis text, and our staff feel that they need to be debriefed, or we need to check in with them, then we can bring them to a meeting room where the conversation is private between the staff and the volunteer, right? So it's basically like an office to environment, and I think that also create a sense of belonging where for the volunteers and a support mechanism for the volunteer, because when they work remotely, they don't feel that they are doing on their own. They are also part of the whole organization. And that's how we look at the way we engage, when we invest our system, right? How we want to serve our client through integrated system, but how do we want to engage our volunteers if they work remotely is through all these virtual volunteer care and things like that.
Thank you. Thanks, Gaspar. It's really interesting to hear that, right? I mean, it's like, and I'm sure with virtual spaces, you expand. You basically expand. You can usually have one whole building, right? You're not limited by your existing physical space. Yeah.
Actually, very interesting. The volunteers, especially the younger one, they will create their own. What do you call that? Avatar. Yeah.
Oh, avatar.
Very interesting avatar. A very cute avatar. They'll just move around, and they are so proud moving around and engaging the rest of the volunteers.
Thank you. What about for BART? I mean, for Catholic Welfare Services? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the challenges, right, of embracing volunteer management. I think mindset, I think for all of us in the social service sector, like what I think speakers mentioned earlier, right, we have this bleeding heart syndrome, right? Bleeding heart. We focus, it's in our DNA, direct service. Yeah, direct client management, right? That's number one priority, right? Focus and all that. So volunteer management, well, might not be core, right? If we are free, we'll manage it. And also, we just put a simple warm body, sometimes less than one warm body against that work, right? So, but I think if the board, the team management imagines the power that we can harness from the volunteers, then the whole thing changes, right? I give you an example. Benjamin was saying he has about almost 10,000 volunteers. SOS 1,000 volunteers. For Catholic Welfare, we are quite small. We have 500 staff, 500 volunteers. 1-to-1 ratio, right? So there's no chance I can get 1,000 staff, right? I can't afford 1,000 staff. But the goodwill and the expertise and the skill sets of the other 500 volunteers that they can bring to the mission of our work is immense, not measurable. But in case, I'm always prepared, the board, right? You were saying $1 million, oh, hire Liana, oh, right? Yeah, I always use the numbers. If I can match one demand and supply, right, which they were mentioning earlier, so speaker, right? If I can match one volunteer with the right skill sets to a important piece of work that needs to be done, maybe on the cheap, just pure numbers without talking about the heart and everything, $20,000 a year. If I match one, $20,000. I match 10, $200,000. I match 500. You can do the math. So I think it will always pay out for me in the view for management, for board. Yeah, I think it always pays out. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So it's really also talking about not just the mindset of the staff, the volunteers, even the board, right? Yeah, I mean, that's where you need convincing, especially if it goes to $1 million. $500,000. Okay. I would like to actually turn the time over to the floor now. I'm sure as you heard the different digitalization projects in VM in the different organizations, you may have questions. So what you can do is you can just raise out your hand. I can bring the mic to you. You can share your name, your organization, and also the question you have. Right, anyone? Yes. Can you hear?
To tell you the truth, Usha, when we started the digitalization journey, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, the discussion, one of our board members was very into blockchain technology. So we did discuss the possibility of using blockchain. But at that time, we were thinking of blockchain more in terms of the one-to-one matching, you know, especially even with overseas work and all that. Blockchain allows that much more seamlessly. But in terms of volunteer management systems, we have not considered using blockchain. But I'm sure that will enter the discussion in the next phase. Yeah.
That might be the topic for maybe next year's. Jasper?
But good question, Ushad. So I think as a SSA, just like any other organization, I think we need to be forward-looking, right? Like just now, we look at AI, you know, blockchain, crypto, all these things. I think we need to be more sensitive towards that. And for us, we have not embarked on this yet, but we have already upgrading our IT committee. So I think that's one step that we are looking at to get in the right expertise, all right? And we start to look at projects. We always like to start with projects, pilots, because it's very dangerous to just implement it. So we are exploring, they are still in talking about, you know, the data protection and how do we be more secured and more confidential in terms of sharing, and how do we do the data mining, you know, all these things. So I think the first step now is for us in SOS is that from our experience that we are upscaling, you know, the profile of our IT committee members so that they are able to help us to look and to plan forward. Yeah. So that's what I can say. And for now, hopefully we can have something in future.
Hi. Yeah, Usha, yeah, similar. We have not explored that, but we are very open to exploring that. Or even earlier, we were talking about chat, GPT and everything. But also we are quite mindful. I mean, we work with our team that technology is an enabler, it's a means to an end. So we try not to be overly caught up, right, with the latest fad and stuff like that and say, oh, that's the latest thing. So we say, okay, if it works, it helps, we do. Yeah, but if it doesn't make too much difference, then maybe no need to do. Yeah, so it's always with an end in mind. How will it eventually make life better for the staff and for the residents and for the volunteers? So if it does, we will go. If it doesn't materially change anything, we'll say, yeah, it's nice to do, but maybe not now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I believe we are almost out of time. Yeah, but maybe for me to actually, at this point in time, just round up a little bit of what I've heard so far. You know, I think it has so far been a very enriching discussion in terms of, you know, me learning. I've learned something called out system. I totally didn't even know about that. But I think one thing that comes out very commonly is what I hear is about really being very forward-looking as well. Not just currently what you're you know, what is the system you're looking at and all that, but also in future. I think Gasper talked about a little bit about expertise as well, right? Whether you also have the volunteers to actually help in that. I think the other thing, you know, like what Bart has mentioned as well, it's really end of the day, not really just catching up, but really end of the day, why are we actually using this system, right? The need for it, yeah, the need for it and all that. And I think Benjamin mentioned it very well, that this all have to be part of a whole plan, digitalization plan. It cannot be your VM system coming in silos, right? It should actually look into how do you actually integrate into, for example, like the donor management system and all that. It's really exciting to hear about all the different the technology that you're using, you know, to serve the service users, to care for the volunteers, you know, even have like literally virtual offices and deploy volunteers, match the right volunteers. And I really hope that you got away with you certain things as well for as you actually consider digitalization for your own VM systems as well. Not just the solution. I think the features, all that, you can go to the gallery, you can talk to different systems, but it's really the thinking behind it, right? The plan, the long-term sustainability, and of course, I think the common to all three panelists is still about mindset, right? So that's really about how do you actually, the game changer is really how do you make sure you can have the most well-built system, but nobody use it, right? And it's no use. right? So in really rounding up, maybe what we can do now is that let's give a round of applause to the panelists. Thank you so much. And I'm sure that as we are preparing, what I'm going to do now is that I actually need your help to just, you all know just now, Ricardo mentioned about QR code, right? This is not, no, it's not the last QR code. You do, okay, this one, next one. Yeah. All right. So we would love to hear from you. So for the last couple of 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you could actually scan the QR code and also just give your feedback for this panel, right? And as you actually also prepare to make your way to the next panel seminar, the practice seminar, all right? So thank you again. Thank you, panelists. Thank you.
James, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Just one quick note. I mean, just something that I learned from my mistake. That when if you are just embarking on a digitalization strategy, I would suggest that you, among your volunteers, you find 2 or 3 people who are IT specialists to advise you. It's different from getting the consultants who are going to do the job to advise you, because they will tell you what you need. But you get independent IT consultants among your volunteers to be your close-in advisors before you embark on your project, because then you will cut down on the number of mistakes you make. Thank you.
Okay. I really want to give the back.
Say that, maybe I just share also one learning from our side. I think it's important to co-create with the volunteers the plan. Number one. Number two is make sure you put in a change management team, right, and allow that timeline and expenses, to be also for the change management. It's very important process for digitalization.
Thank you. I actually want to say, so I'm actually going to pass the mic over to Bud also, because, yeah, lots of, okay. Yeah, but I mean, really, wow, this is really getting the bang for the buck, right? It's like we were getting the words of wisdom on really what are some of the, tips that you should actually consider also. So hopefully that has been helpful, and you filled up the feedback form, and we'll see you at the next practice seminar. Thank you, and maybe next year we have something on blockchain, all right? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. No online audience, no. Yeah?
Spread it out. Add one more inside, is it?
No, we just connect this way, right?
Add one more.
I think the table is flexible.
Yeah, flexible. So it's a bigger round table, bigger round.
That's why it's like the
King Arthur.
Yeah, round table, nice round.
Okay.
Hey,
Oval table, oval.
Okay. Can. I think okay lah. I think enough. Okay. Come.
okay, all right. Now we don't want to hold you all back. Can you join us? So as we were mentioning, we are in harnessing the power of digital. So today we actually have with us 3 on our panelists. We have Benjamin from Singapore Red Cross Society, right? We have Jasper from SOS, right? And we also have Bud from Public Welfare Services. So today we actually hear how DPM actually talked about how volunteerism is actually very crucial to nation building. And of course, in order to move volunteers and volunteerism, volunteer managers are important. Volunteer management is important. But then we all know, those who are volunteer managers, the role is very dynamic, and that's where I think we can harness the power of digital. So today what we want to do is, I was just joking in the first session, right, as I'm looking through the profile of our panelists, I realized that it's a good mix, because they are all in the social service sector, but they have different experiences in both social and public, and also private. So we actually get very good insights and we hope that you can actually learn from their journey, right, of what they have done in digitalization of VM. Right? So maybe without further ado, okay, maybe let's start. Maybe we can have you share, okay, to the panelists. Maybe you share a little bit about what digitalization project you did for VM and what made you actually decide. Maybe what?
Okay. Yeah. So Catholic Welfare Services. So good afternoon, everyone. I think for digitization of volunteer management, I think as an organization, we do more than just one piece, because I think Benjamin later he will share a little bit that normally you should go big. think of everything else. And then, so we do e-procurement, e-HR, e-finance, etc. So we do that. But okay, now back to this volunteer management specifically. Catholic Welfare Services have been around for almost 64 years. So we grew our services along the years. So we have many services, elder care services in nursing homes, hospice for the dying, the homeless shelters for those who are sleeping on the streets. We have training centers for the intellectually challenged adults. So quite a few services. The beneficiaries grew, and then now the volunteers started growing. So we have a challenge. How do we manage so many volunteers? So the pain point we had was that the volunteers are feeling frustrated. Those potential would-be volunteers, it's a pain point. Their journey is difficult. How do they find out what services is suitable for them? What skill sets is needed? What commitment levels is needed? How do I sign up? I mean, it's difficult. Last time, you can do phone call, email, but this when it's a small intimate group where you have 500 and people keep coming, you can't manage. It's very difficult, and they get frustrated, and sometimes we lose volunteers. I don't want to sign up because it'll take so long to come back, right? So it's a waste of their talent, it's a waste of their goodwill and skill set. So that's one. For us as an organization, Catholic Welfare Services, we also start to feel we don't have a grip on the information of the volunteers that we have. It's too many, right? And we cannot effectively deploy the skill sets, their interests to the right services we need, right? The demand and supply matching. So we don't know the profile, how old are they, what their interest levels, and also the regularity of their involvement, their feedback, are they satisfied? So we don't know. So that's a challenge, both sides. So we say no choice. We have to make a move. So we made a humble first move to put in this volunteer management system, right, whereby it's a one seamless platform. Data is updated live, so you don't have to wait for spreadsheets to be collated and other. So it's live data. You press the button, it comes up, right, in the pie charts and all that. You know exactly who your volunteers are, where, etc. And so it's easy for us as an organization, but I think it's becoming also a nicer journey for the volunteers. At one stop, they go in, they can get all the information they need, and we can interact with them more on a one-on-one basis. We know how many times they have volunteered, what skill sets they have and they need, and we can proper training for them, or proper events for them to take part in. So it becomes more helpful to them as well, more satisfying. So we're happy like so far doing okay, and yeah, if you all want to share, I mean, want us to share a bit more, we can later. Yeah.
Thanks, Bud.
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear, the digitalization project is actually on the volunteer management system, right?
Yeah, on the system.
And with the aim of
yeah, currently we use Salesforce. Yeah, so it's a work in progress thing. So we keep fine tuning, improve a little bit, and the interface can be friendlier to the user. They are vendors. So there are many vendors, right? 5-6 vendors in Singapore Salesforce. So some are friendlier and more helpful. Some are. Yeah, Green Lane. So, but we are also open to moving beyond Salesforce, right? Because there are other CRM software coming. Like I heard one that's quite good is BizCube. Yeah, BizCube. So we are meeting them tomorrow to see. Yeah, I mean, if it's stronger, more powerful, more user friendly, why not? We will not be fixated with one. Yeah, but if there's a better one coming along, yeah, we will see and explore.
This is just VMS alone, or is it integrated with the
VMS, and we are putting in donor management system. So we currently use the same platform. So Salesforce can do both, right? So the BizCube can also do both. So we are happy to use whichever platform that is friendlier. Yeah.
Thanks for that. And I think we were having a conversation earlier on, about really learning from one another, right? Especially if let's say you have good vendors,
Yeah.
So thanks for that. I think that starts from for Bud and Catholic Welfare Services is really from how to actually make the volunteer journey a little bit more pleasant, right? To address the pain point. What about for Gasper, for SOS? How do you actually, what kind of digitalization project on VM have you been embarked on, and why?
Yeah, so many of you know that SOS, we are just a telephone operator. No, we had a crisis call, and I think 3 years ago we started the plan to digitalize. But I think I just want to highlight that when we look at digitalization plan, it has to be what is your need, right? Not just because trend is going digitalized. Right? Everybody must go and do digital. But really, what is need for us? There are a few driving force behind the need for us to go into digitalization. Number one is the changing landscape, right? Where people are more used to technology now, right? WhatsApp, online, and things like that. Number two is the nature of our work. The nature of our work is that we need to be consistent and we need to be time sensitive, right? Because every calls, every text that we receive, we need to provide that consistency because of our service. The other thing is that post-COVID also, one positive thing out of post-COVID is that more people are encouraged or step forward to seek help. Right? So our volume for calls and text also, and also other services also increase. Compared to 2022 to 2020, in 2020 we served about 11,000 at-risk individuals, but last year 2022 we served 27,000 at-risk individuals. So there's an increase of 136%, and we do need technology to help us to cope, right? Not just the volunteers, but also how do we support the volunteer? How do we empower the volunteer? How do we, like what speaker say, the productivity is also important, right? Mm-hmm. It's how do you make sure that they are able to not get burnt out and things like that. So we look at the digitalization as empowering the volunteer, supporting the volunteer, and also how do we look at the volunteer care as well. Mm-hmm. And that brings us to the way how we look at the volunteer. How do we look at the digitalization planning was that we went back and co-create the whole journey with our volunteers to look at how do we want to serve our client and how do we want to engage our volunteers. And these are two things that are interrelated. The way we serve will impact the way we engage our volunteer, and the way we engage our volunteer will impact the way we serve our client. And ultimately, of course, we want to make sure that we can provide better service to our client, right? All these at-risk clients. And that resulted in our investment in upgrading our telephony system and our CRM system. And I think the benefit of it includes we are able to have remote access, we're able to better collaboration among the different services that we have in SOS, not just our counseling, but also our tax, our hotline, our support group, and things like that. So we are able to provide a more integrated service delivery to our client. And that is a very important element to us, because then our client will find it's seamless when they engage SOS. Not like last time when they engage us, we provide silo service. Right? You call and then you text. Text and call don't know what is going on. But now, if you text and you call, our back-end system, we are able to say, hey, is this person the same person? Because and that will actually improve the productivity, because our crisis support team staff will quickly able to sieve this thing out and say, hey, this person may have called us earlier, and these are the presenting issues. Would you like to jump into it quickly? So we don't have to go through the same question again, because we do have a methodology to go through, right? So we don't have to go through that process again, and we can quickly jump in and verify and confirm and quickly address the issues. And also we have a better cyber security and IT protection in infrastructure, with the investment. But ultimately, I shared earlier also that. So how does it help us in our outcome? I think that's more important. But with that, we're also able to enhance our support to our volunteers, not just to enhance the service and support to our volunteers, but also empower them to be able to support better and timely manner to our client. And together with our staff team, we also able to enhance our service delivery, where we introduce active rescue. Previously, we can't do that because it's individual service, silo services, and we always encourage our client to stay safe. at the end of it, when we find that they escalate, we will end the call or we'll end the text. But now, no. We are able to do active rescue when we find that, people, when they call us and they are on the verge of ending their life, we are able to intervene now, right? I won't go into detail, but various services that we have now, and also, with police and SCDF and things like that. And over the last 11 months, I shared earlier with the earlier group, we are able to save 114 lives. And these are the people who are at the verge of ending their life when they contact us. And if you equal out 11 months, it's about 10 lives we save a month, and that's equal to about 1 life in every 3 days. And that's very stressful and can create burnout for volunteers and all stuff. So if we don't have that support system to facilitate and all these things, that can be quite detrimental.
Thanks for sharing. That is, I remember from the previous, you mentioned 114, right? 114 lives. So it's really a system that's focused on helping volunteers, because SOS is very volunteer-driven also. So it's helping volunteers to deliver the service so much that lives can be saved. So the good news, that's the good news. The good news also, I think we have some more people coming in, joining us. Do feel free to just drag a chair forward. Okay, we were just talking a little bit about, from the panelists, what are the digitalization projects that they have embarked on for PM and also why. So now we turn to Benjamin. Benjamin's from Singapore Red Cross Society. So Benjamin, why don't you share with us a little bit about your project?
Yep.
Yeah.
So by way of background, the Singapore Red Cross is a multi-purpose charity. Many charities in Singapore are single purpose, but we are multi-purpose. We have local work, we have overseas work. Our local work involves mainly working with people with disabilities and the elderly. So many of our programs that are based locally are not very well known, but actually quite extensive. And to complicate matters, we also have an overseas component where we send volunteers overseas as well. So that's the first thing about the Singapore Red Cross. Our services are fairly extensive, and a lot of it depends on the work of volunteers. The second point I want to make is that this journey of digitalization, which started in Singapore Red Cross about 6-7 years ago, is a broader approach or strategy. The point I wanted to make is that it is difficult to have digitalization of the volunteer management in a silo. I think in most cases, when you embark on a digitalization strategy, it has to be a broader strategy that involves other processes in the organization. So in fact, some of the digitalization started with other processes like our HR processes, our financial processes, our purchasing and things like that. Then we decided to also develop the volunteer management system, and I tell you why. We realized that in order to grow our services, we could not just depend on staff. We had to depend more and more on growing a pool of volunteers. And we have about 30,000 volunteers, about 9,000 to 10,000 of them active. But even the 9,000 to 10,000 of them, you can still drill it down to about 1,000 who are actively involved in the regular programs. And in order to grow our programs exponentially, a term that was used several times today, we realized we need to really grow our pool of very dedicated volunteers, people who can even turn up in the middle of the night and all that, responding, for example, to our home monitoring services. So we needed volunteers who are better trained, more empowered, readily deployed and coordinated. So our volunteer management system is based on this. So we have developed a single platform which enables us to, number one, reach out and recruit. So volunteers can actually go in to even sign on. Then we will respond and reach out to them. The platform allows us to mobilize the volunteers as and when needed, to communicate with them. That means we are able to create projects within the system and then to shout out so that the volunteers can respond. We are also able to coordinate training for our volunteers. Like many of our services need proper training, either in first aid, in psychological first aid, or community befriending. Now, in the past, one of the challenges we faced was sometimes our volunteers are trained, but when we want to push and say, okay, who is first aid trained, we have difficulty. So now it is at our fingertips, so you have the training records. The other area that the volunteer management system is very useful is in terms of record of deployment and service hours. We have a system of volunteer awards, and we want the volunteer awards to be rigorous so that our volunteers don't gripe and say how come this person got the award and not me. So we want it to be more rigorous. Now, one additional point I will say, which goes back to my first point, that the strategy has to be integrated, is that we are now developing our donor management system, and for example, and our donor management system will fit in with the volunteer management system and speak to each other, so that volunteers who are donors, we will also be able to capture an entire record. And so we know who are volunteers who are also donors and vice versa. So I think it is very important for us to set out on our on our digitalization journey, knowing exactly what you want, and then being able to decide on the size of your project. It is very important because digitalization is an expensive process, and the end must justify your cost. So I think leave it there, and then maybe when you all have questions, I can elaborate further.
Thank you, Benjamin, for sharing that. I believe you have actually got like different features, so as to speak, right, of the different VM systems that we hear about. And we want to actually definitely hear more from the different journeys. So one thing about it is that I hear common to all the three panelists is that I believe your organizations actually saw how volunteers are important, right? I mean, it's really heartening to hear you can activate a volunteer, literally when really is needed, right? And that's really, even for active rescue and all that, right? So, and to be well supported by staff. The question I have is that no project is without its challenges, right? We can paint the nice rosy picture of, oh, digitalization is good, but we also have to be very pragmatic and realistic about challenges as well. So maybe we hear from Bart. What are some challenges that you face, when you try to implement this volunteer management system in Catholic welfare services?
Yeah, I think I was sharing with the last group of attendants, right? I think it was more so the mindset that let's focus on our core. Let's focus on our core work. Right? Our core work is always direct service and direct client service. Let's focus on that. This one, if we have time, we do. Right? This is, and then God willing, maybe we get a few volunteers. Don't worry, this kind of thing will settle on its own. It's like that. And then nobody to do. We just throw a warm body or half a warm body. You take care. So that's how historically most of us are like that. But we realize that it is you're not looking at the size of the price, the value of the volunteers properly. Yeah. So if you take a look at now Catholic Welfare Services, we have 500 staff. Mainly nurses, we have a lot of nurses and therapists. We run nursing homes, and we have 500 volunteers. So it's almost once to one. They have much more. So the power and the goodwill and the skills of 500 people, it's almost doubling my head count, right? And the number of skill sets, right? So how valuable is that? So if it's so valuable, then we should pay attention. Just sometimes because we are so busy, right? Do the thing first, the urgent thing first, rather than the important. So I think that was important. We just shared with the board and all that, with our team guys. The value is so big. Put some attention into it, and then get the value versus being busy every day. For sure, there's not enough time to finish, right? Because but with another 500 people coming to help, you have more time, right? So that was the key.
So it's kind of like you need to bite the bullet.
Yeah.
Knowing what is urgent and what is important.
Yeah.
So what were some of the roadblocks that you find, as you want to bite the bullet and go ahead?
I think it's more on the board can be quite quickly convinced because the board members are generally quite senior. If you put the maths, the numbers together, they get it. Sometimes the operational staff, the staff on the ground, so busy. I'm already so busy. He asked me to do this kind of thing, manager. So it's important. So we say we put in proper resource. We must put the money where the mouth is. So we hired proper volunteer managers. We took two. Put in systems, we invest in the system. So we say, guys, don't worry, we're not going to make you do, put this on your extra hat, right? Because then it's not fair. Also, it's important we put the resource. So, yeah. So then the thing had a life of its own already. Yeah, so yeah, and we got 2 times more volunteers over 2 years, from 250 to 500. Yeah, so that was a very good thing. Yeah, yeah.
So I hear it's really using statistics to kind of like convince the board, the figures, right?
Yeah.
And also like in terms of our staff, really seeing that we feel your pain.
Yeah, and not to not to put it onto the existing load. So put in another person to do it. Otherwise it might be not so fair to the same guy, the current guy who's doing operations, doing communications, it's like, so another, it's not focused, doing one, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. What about Gasper? For SOS, what were some challenges and roadblocks, and how do you address them?
Because SOS depend a lot on volunteers, right, to make sure that we are able to run our service 365 days. We do have long-term volunteers that stay with us like 40 years, 45 years, and they are all very invested volunteers, right? Every year they commit like 200-300 hours with us, supporting our service. So their voice are very loud and very important to us. We hear them. That's why a lot of our design, our services, our processes are co-created with them. And I think when we look at digitalization, later on Benjamin also will be sharing this. I just want to touch on this. It's a mindset, right? A lot of them, the more senior one, will have the fear of the technology. And because we are in high touch kind of service, where human touch is very important, right? When people contact you, they want the emotional support. They fear that if technology take over, then are we chasing away the client? So that's one of the area that the challenges that we have. Number 2 is that cost, right? Because all these systems are not cheap, and also we need to look at sustainability of it. I think number 3 part is that I don't know how many of you have volunteers that work remotely. So in SOS, during pandemic and after pandemic now, we do have volunteers that work remotely. Though how do we provide that volunteer care to them, right? So we do have virtual office. So we created a virtual office where the volunteers, so it's important because this virtual office provide, also is designed the same thing as like our physical office. We have meeting rooms, we have debriefing room, we have resource room where the volunteer can go into the resource room to look for, let's say they are not too sure about the SOP. They go there, they click, they can look at the SOP, or they can look at the cases reference, like this kind of case, what should we handle, how should we handle, so just to refresh the mind and things like that. And if we need to do debriefing after a crisis call or crisis text, we can get them to the briefing room where only the staff and him or the person or the volunteer are able to communicate, and they are able to see each other only. Or they can also go to pantry when they take a break, just to meet up with people and then chit chat with other volunteers who also support on duty remotely. And they can create their own avatar, right? And they design their own avatar. They can, they feel proud. And I think it's important for volunteer care because it gives them the sense of belonging, and also that when they are on duty, we can provide that volunteer care, not just when they are online to support our client, but also when to build the community that they belong to, so that they are able to felt the sense of belonging, sense of care, and also when they need that support, we are there for them.
Yeah, thanks, Jasper. So I hear that it's really the difficulty of really, especially during COVID, not being able to really engage right? And then finance, financials, as well as mindset. Yeah. So thanks for sharing that, and even how you creatively look into virtual space. So last time we always talk about having a volunteer room, right? Now just literally have a whole volunteer center. You can have pantry, you got debrief room and all that. So turning over to Red Cross, I mean, what about Benjamin? I mean, for your side, what were some roadblocks that you faced?
Yeah. So I would say the challenges. I think one of the big challenges is mindset shift. I think perhaps COVID actually has helped.
Yeah.
Because COVID actually made people realize you need to be mobile, you need to be able to work from home and all that. So if anything, maybe COVID has shifted more people into the online mindset. But I think overall, a mindset shift is one of the major challenges. And here it's both the volunteers and the staff. With regard to the volunteers, especially with a large pool of older volunteers, it's more difficult for them to go online to do the mobilization and all that. So you have to also reach out to them. But I think the staff is just as important in terms of getting them on board, getting them to own the system and say that this is mine, not something that is forced down on me by the management or something. So I think the mindset shift is very important. And I think that needs to be developed. It helps if the whole processes, the whole set of processes are being digitalized. It's not just the volunteer management system. So if people get used to going into the suite of services. The second is, I think, the cost. So I think, there's a famous saying, you want to go to war, you got to sit down and count the cost first, right? So I think it's very important to count the cost. And sometimes you might make the mistake of just thinking that the development cost is what you have to deal with. So you might have a donor coming and saying, okay, we will pay for your development cost. But many of you on the digitalization journey might realize that in 3 years, your running cost will equal the development cost. Roughly around there, I think. So the ongoing cost of digitalization is actually also quite high, depending on the system that you have adopted. So you got to take care of both. That means, your budget has to. The third, so therefore, if the cost is going to be fairly extensive, the benefit you get from the system must be worth it. So if you go and develop a system, just because everyone else is developing a system, you might find that you're not getting the maximum out of it. So I think you've got to be careful. The third is the choice of the system. I shared with the other group, I think there are 3 broad categories. One which is totally out off the shelves, something like your Salesforce and all that, with minimum customization. The second is to build from ground up, which is our VMS version 1. And the third is like a hybrid of the two. We use a system called OutSystems, which is like Lego bricks, and you can build different systems. But the advantage of that is that there are a number of vendors out there who can deal with OutSystems. So you're not left high and dry like when you build a system from ground up. So the choice of system is very important. The next point I would say is related to that. I think many of us, including me, made the mistake of being sort of advised by the vendors that we approach. And they will always tell you that you need this and you need that, or this is the best way and things like that. That's number one. But number two, which is slightly more insidious, is that when you get a system from, even the OutSystems from a certain vendor, you need to have certain keys and all that, so that if this vendor goes out of business or if this vendor holds you to ransom, you can go to another vendor. So it is very important when you embark on a digitalization approach to have 1 or 2 IT consultants who are your independent advisors, not the vendors advising you. People who have totally no interest in bidding for your project. And this can be your volunteers. So if you are thinking of digitalization, my advice to you is shout out to your volunteers, get 1 or 2 IT people to sit down with you, even when they meet the vendors and all that, because they will know what they're talking about, and then will be able to advise you. I think these are some of the pitfalls that you may need to watch out for.
Thank you, Benjamin. I think you have actually covered a very important point about sustainability, right? As well as getting independent opinions, right? Like kind of like second
advice.
opinion.
It's not even an opinion.
Advice. I'm going totally off script here, but I'm sure this is also a subject that you should be able to actually provide insights to for both Bart and Jasper. Is, following from this thread of discussion from Benjamin, what do you think are some of the factors you look into when actually selecting, let's say, a digital solution, a digitalization solution? Like, so for example, for SOS is the telephony and CRM solution, right? And then for Bart is the DMS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, really, we need to understand our need first. Don't go and look at what is the system capable, capability, right? List out what do you want first, right? And then only you start to talk to the vendor and let them propose to you what their system can meet you. Right? It's important to understand our needs, and the driving force should be coming up from our needs rather than what the system can do for us. And just like what Bart just now said, I think we shouldn't go, with an empty mind and say, okay, I want to do volunteer management system. What is the available system in the market? I think that's the wrong approach. I think from our learning, we find that it's important that we dwell inside and understand what we need first, and then you start to talk to the vendor, and then only I think you can see which are the solution that can meet your needs. I think that's very important. I think that's one of the key things. And I totally resonate with what Benjamin said. In many of us, our SSA, we don't have IT expert as real expert, subject matter expert. So to us, our IT committee is very important. So what I do is that I go out and recruit, subject matter expert to be on our IT committee, and they provide a very good a platform for us to evaluate critical projects, major projects, like how we want to, for example, like I said, the way we want to serve, the way I engage. Once we are able to articulate that, we bring to the IT committee and we start to use their expertise to design what are those things that we can do, to support our needs. That's how we, our learning, and that actually speed up a lot of processes, and you can get a lot of knowledge out of this subject matter expert.
Yeah, very similar. So basically, don't be shy, ask for help, and check with your friends in the same sector. Yeah, so because it's not possible. Like maybe you are VM trained, but you're not finance trained, right? A finance system, you will never know, right? Maybe a procurement system, we will never know. We will never know. So sometimes if we try on our own accord to try, and there's no way subject matter we understand it well. But ask fellow friends, right? Like if you go to Benjamin, he will say, "Oh, there's a very good one. This is very good," and some other people will say, "This is very good," right? And then you learn it. I had one very bad experience. I tried it myself. I thought I came from the commercial world and I can procurement. I'll just go. After that, like what Benjamin said, it's a standalone. When the vendor said thank you, enough, finish, then the whole system is gone. You're gonna start all over zero, right? So no need. There's enough friends in our sector, right? If we ask around NCSS, AIC, Red Cross, right? And we ask around, we will be able to share with each other the knowledge. This is a good system. This one is a so-so system. Yeah.
Thanks,
No, I think I think the other thing that you have to watch out for is PDPA. The more you go digital, the more you become liable for PDPA. So you got to watch out on that. Make sure that all your digital systems are you do a VAPT testing before you deploy it. Because the more data is on your systems, the more vulnerable you become.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ask a question based on that. Yeah, because the basis of PDPA is actually where you post the particulars. Then posting wise is always a cost lah, no matter where we go.
Yeah.
So how do you all find solutions for that? Or do you all just get direct funding? Because it seems like a very heavy cost. I mean, on one end, and it's also a long term. Like you have to pay by month.
Yes. So the especially if you have Because most of the subscription systems out there are based on per user or per. So if you have a huge pool of users, then the cost will go up. So that's why you have to balance your need and for the system and what kind of system. Some of the off-the-shelf systems, the subscription cost is lower. So that's where you have to balance. But whatever it is, you have to do due diligence on the security of the host. So, you know, like if you use Amazon Web Services or what to host your service, it is fairly safe because Amazon already puts in, you know, millions of dollars on the security of the base. Then after that, you got to secure your own house, right? They secure the country, then you secure your house, right? But if you think you want to go cheap and then you go to one of the more affordable hosting agencies or platforms, then you got to pay attention to the security of the system because there's always a backdoor to the system, which we learn the hard way.
Anything to chime in for?
By the way, that's why you need IT experts to advise you. Yeah.
But you're talking about the sustainability of it and the cost, right? Where do we get the cost to support? Is it?
So sometimes it comes back to me, okay, so this is the cost, then I will convince my board or, you know, like my ED that, hey, this is the cost we have to pay. You know, but there's always a choice to make. I mean, given the limited resources, we often choose the lower end. Yeah, at the cost of
That's a very dangerous decision.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous because the fine is quite substantial.
But I think what Benjamin said is very important because the whole IT sector is moving towards SaaS, right? Software as a service, right? So it's per user basis, and so even like you're using cloud storage or this thing, right? You go by size, right? So I think the mindset have to change also at the organization level there, where IT cost may not be a fixed cost anymore. It will be a variable cost. As you grow, your subscription cost will increase, right? For example, our volunteers need to have license to use our CRM. Yeah. The more we grow our volunteers, the more we have to add in the cost for our volunteers because they are also users.
Per user, yeah.
Yeah. So organization need to, that's why I said, Benjamin said correctly, it has to be a strategic decision when you make that digitalization plan. It's not just one time off, it's a long term, right? How will it benefit the organization? Is this the direction you want to go towards, right? And digitalization can be as simple as automation, like automate certain process, like using Excel or whatever. But in your case, if it involves client, volunteers, data, and all these things, then it is a growing thing, right? And then you need to, organization have to make a intentional decision to look at how do you want to look at the sustainability of it.
Yeah. So sustainability is also related to the use of the system. So for example, if you create this system and you pay $200,000 or $300,000 to develop it, and then you just use it to see who are your volunteers, then it's really useless because you could have done it with an Excel sheet. So you must maximize your system. So I suppose one of the ways to bring it across to your ED or to your board is to say that with this system, these are the things that we will be doing, which will make our services that much more efficient. And that over 3 years, normally in the first year you won't be able to, recoup on paper the cost. But over 3 years or 5 years, the benefit you get from deploying the system will far outweigh the cost of deploying the system. So you have to believe it yourself. If you create this very sophisticated system and it does nothing more than what you normally do on Excel sheet, except that now you can say you have a VMS, then you might as well not embark on the journey. So in fact, to tell you the truth, even I, after 5 or 6 years with a VMS, is still not struggling, but still pushing the boundaries to maximize the use of it.
So I mean, just to add on this, and also sharing that, yeah, we started on the VMS last year. Yeah, so I took over the uncompleted project. Yeah, and actually it was a funded project. So we were, through the consulting company, like given this vendor. Yeah. But there are, so when we, in the process of negotiating like what goes into the system, we realized that actually like what we need, then when we propose, when we say it, then we have to add additional costs on our own.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is one thing for you to take note.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not so straightforward as
Yeah.
is, and we didn't have IT consultants.
Yeah.
Like unfortunately, like I mean, in our closer,
Yeah.
like pool of volunteers, so we didn't know
Yeah.
like how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and because it's a funded project, yeah, we have to fall within the boundaries of the funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't calculated that we will need extra, to
Yeah.
in order for this VMS to function at the ways, at the at what we need lah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the
Yeah.
the difficulty.
No. For those of you who haven't started on the journey, this is a key factor, because somebody will come and say it's funded. So our first VMS version 1, is similar kind of story. We had the funding for it, developing it. So we developed it, right? But later we have the thing. Then every time we say, oh, this feature needs to be added, the cost will be 20,000 or 30,000. And then you realize that actually the cost keeps going up. And then you can't go to another vendor because this vendor has all the holes, all the keys to the development of the system, which you don't understand if you're not an IT person. All it needs is one key inside there, and then you are unable to touch the system. And another vendor won't be able to touch. Then when you go to another vendor, they will tell you, oh, I'm sorry, I can't change this, but I can develop a new system for you. Right? Then you run the whole thing again. So be very careful. So, I mean, if I learn from my mistake, what I will advise you is that don't embark on any digitalization project unless you have an IT person sitting next to you and telling you, okay, Ben, please look out for this, please look out for that. And he cannot be related to the vendor, because he'll lead you by the nose.
Thanks for that. Thanks for Benjamin. I think one thing that you brought up about lesson, right, which I think maybe might be the concluding question, if you have another lesson to share. One thing that really brought up is that about how having a subject matter expert as a volunteer, right, would actually help. Whether is it I think in Gasper's case it's a committee, right, or a volunteer. Personally, as a volunteer manager, one of the things I find volunteer managers are very good at is actually finding volunteers for other people, except for yourself. Yeah, and someone has ever said this before, that the volunteer manager is the most powerful person because you have access to any skill in the community. You can just go and ask, including IT volunteers. Consultants sometimes are just, they know business management consultancy, they know, but then they may not have the technical know-how. So that's something, that's one learning point. Maybe hear from, if let's say, from your whole digitalization journey, right, even as we round up, what are some one or two learning points, maybe one first, yeah.
So from SOS perspective, I'm talking about the digitalization that involve volunteers, right? Because volunteer will be using our technology, right? I think if you are going towards that kind of route where volunteers will be using your system, I think learning point is that you need to co-create with the volunteers. Otherwise, you have a lot of problems, because volunteer will say, no, this is not what I want, and all this thing. You got to involve volunteer leaders in that co-creation. Number two is, I think, don't just fix your cost on how much the system worth or development. Beside those additional planning, like usually certain percentage, 20% or whatever, you need to also factor in cost for change management. It's a long process. While you develop your system, you need to start engaging your volunteers and your staff, and that change management required training, engagement, right? Workshop and things like that, and that involves cost, right? Especially if your organization is big and your volunteers that are using the system are a lot. You need to factor in that expenses, because change management need time and expenses, and that can be quite big if your project is huge. Like for us, we do the full telephony system and CRM upgrade, totally new system, totally different system, and we have to go through that change management process of educating, involving them, from stages of the development to try out the system and things like that. And that huge cost also need to be factored in. And also, I think the third thing is that beside co-creation, change management processes and the budget, the third thing is the implementation team. You need a team dedicated to make sure to see through the whole implementation. Otherwise, it cannot be a part-time job for volunteer management or head of department and all these things, because you will never get done, because on our day-to-day itself, we have a lot of things to handle already. And this implementation team is important because they need to see through the timeline. They need to push and work with all the departments to get things done.
But this is learning for myself. So I went through the pains myself, and also now I tell my team, don't need to try to do on your own, and no need to start from ground zero. Whatever pains or challenges we have or thinking we have, right? Somebody has went through the lesson already, right? So find enough friends. For example, today, if you are thinking of Salesforce, maybe you come and visit me lah. Then we do a demo for you, and we tell you the truth. This is the good. This is the bad. This is the tricky. This is the one. Finish off. It's a real case. It's not the vendor theory case, it's a real one. So I'm exploring another new service, another new software, right? So the best way is like what Ben was saying, the vendor is coming. Okay, I'll listen to the vendor, but I'll find who is the guy who actually done it already. Someone in the sector has done it already. So how was it? Can you demo for me? How do you feel? And then what are the problems? What are the challenges, right? So then it's easier, faster. I think. It's all trusted friends in the same sector, right? No, what's the point of me cheating you, right? I'm not a vendor, right? We'll tell you, hey, avoid this one, don't do this, right? Then we take away all the start from zero. Everybody got to go through the same pain. No need to, I think.
Benjamin, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think just one last point to add to what all the wisdom around the table. I think someone told me the KISS principle. Keep it short, stupid. When you speak lah. But you can say for the digitalization, I think keep it simple and straightforward. I think sometimes if you just depend on a vendor, the person will come and say, why don't you have this feature and that feature and that feature and all that. And if you're not clear in your mind what you need, you will end up having a lot of features which complicates the system and makes it more difficult for the volunteers and all that to use. So the more simple it is, but it must of course meet your needs, the more easily it will be owned by the volunteers and the staff. So keep it simple and straightforward.
Thank you. And I believe that, thank you to the panelists for really sharing your wisdom about your journey. I believe you have picked up different things from it. I mean, for me, I've learned about importance of co-creation, importance of having a more long-term view, about the investment, and also the importance of having friends and advice, whether the friend is your volunteer or other social service agencies that have actually embarked on this journey. Maybe for the remaining time, right, what I want to do is also, because this is really learning from wisdom of each another, right? What about for you? What were some takeaways that you had very quickly, share so that we can multiply the learning? What about you? Just like for myself, I shared the 3. What learnings do you take away from this session? What are some things that you really want to remember?
Have an IT consultant with you.
Have an IT consultant with you.
Yeah.
Pro bono? Pro bono or both?
No, volunteer.
Volunteer. Okay.
Who has your back? Huh? Someone you trust. Yeah.
Whether you have a consultant or not, fundamentally you need to be very clear about your own work process and workflow and what your needs are, because the consultant can't help you. The consultant works off what, typically they will ask you for workflow, plan, process, all the different things. Even your whole entire influence and impact a lot of this requirements.
Thanks for perspective, David. Yeah, I mean about PDPA and also about getting the like where you want to actually host it, and also consultants, the difference, right, between what a consultant can do. So thanks for that also. Yeah. Someone else maybe very quickly, one or two more, so that we can multiply the learning with one another. I personally have worked with a business consultancy volunteer who is actually currently been working with me for the last 1.5 years. We've done many strategic projects, including business process review. And I had an IT volunteer who actually helped me. I think he would have developed something that would have cost about $50,000 to $60,000 pro bono. So it's possible to find. It's just that where you find it. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Maybe the lady behind you actually have something to share.
I guess what I really take away from all the discussion is that slow and steady beats the game. All of you go before us, so we know whether to do or not to do. Yeah. Thank you for all the tips. It's really good. Yeah. I personally really like the part that we really must know what we have existing and what we want the digitization do for us. Be very clear on that so that we're not being cheated in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't lose sight, right, of the important. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. So, in the interest of time, and to also make sure that you all go back on time, well, Ricardo mentioned that was the last QR code. We have one final QR code, and that really will be the final QR code for today. All right. It's definitely the last QR code for me.
Promise.
Yes. So we would actually appreciate if you can help us to complete this feedback form. I'll share with us a little bit how this panel has been for you. And I really want to take this opportunity to really thank Benjamin, Bart, as well as Gasper, really for sharing your insights and journey. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone also. This is a very different format from what we envisaged.
Yeah, so cozy.
But I thought it's much nicer.
Much nicer, yeah. We actually had a roundtable discussion.
Very nice, very nice.